Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 17th video lesson in this course. We're nearing the end, and we have a lot to cover. And guess what? Today is different. So see if you notice the differences. No doubt you will. And I think you'll be challenged. We're going to ratchet it up a notch. If you ratchet something up a notch, you tighten it. You make it more difficult. I'm actually going to spell ratchet for you because I'm sure you haven't heard it very often. To ratchet something up, whoa, okay, here we go. Ratchet, to ratchet something up is to, I think it's a building term, just to tighten, I believe, but to ratchet something up a notch is to make it more difficult. And that's what we're going to do today, is to challenge you in different ways with your language abilities. All right. Now you have listening, which you are going to do, and I'm actually going to take our first idea from the listening. Plinth is defined in the first two sentences of the audio, so I won't do it, but I'll just say this is a Greek term that is not very common in English. So if you use the word plinth in the US, you will definitely have to explain it because native speakers won't know what that means, and probably also in the UK, unless they studied architecture or Greek and Roman history. All right. Now, if you go down to 7.6, we have here a, where is that? Here we go. Shortly afterwards, this sentence here, it's going to be in the audio file. Shortly afterwards, the authorities decided to seek opinions from public art commissioners, critics, and members of the public as to the future of the plinth. Now I delete as to the future of the plinth and hold the other one. And what I'm going to do today is talk about that sentence and talk about the various ways we can pitch that message. If you pitch something, you sell it. But the various sort of constructions we can use both in register and style, which is sort of linked. So let's get started, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So if we go over here, what I've done is I've taken this, what I've just read to you. Shortly afterwards, the authorities decided to seek opinions from art critics, I'm sorry, from public art commissioners, critics, and members of the public. Now that's what's actually said on the recording, the audio recording. Now, what I thought I would do is I would first parse the sentence. Now, I want to do that because I think some of us need a better grip, a better understanding of how English sentences are constructed. So I will just offer a very brief parsing. A parsing is to go into detail and explain the actual parts of a sentence. So shortly afterwards is an introductory adverbial phrase. Adverbial because it talks about time. So shortly afterwards, and the reason it's adverbial is that it is modifying of sorts authorities. When did they decide? Shortly afterwards. So this is an adverbial introductory phrase. Now a phrase is different from a clause. A clause is generally longer, but it contains a verb. Phrases don't. So we have prepositional phrases. Here's a prepositional phrase from public art commissioners. In fact, this is all a prepositional phrase. I'll just show you that now. We have a prepositional phrase with three objects. That's not very common, but we have it here. From is the preposition, and this is a long prepositional phrase. So this is a phrase, and this is a phrase. So if these are phrases, we can cut them out and we look for the core sentence. There's always a core sentence is comprised of a subject and a verb. Now the verb can be unspoken and the subject can be unspoken. For example, go. There's just one word, go. But the subject is implied, you go. It's a command, go. So even there, we have a subject and a verb. The subject is implied. You go is the verb. So sentences always have to contain those elements. So here we have, well, I'll ask you, what is the core sentence here? The core sentence is authorities decided. Now we have to add a lot to that. And what did they decide? Well, here's a second prepositional phrase, decided to seek opinions. So that's what they decided to do. And then from whom? From commissioners, critics, and the public. So we have two prepositional phrases that complete that. What did they decide? And from whom? They decided to seek opinions from these people. When did they decide? Shortly afterwards. We don't know the context, so we don't know after what, but we do know it was a time element. So that's how you parse a sentence. Now, why is this important? Well, if you're teaching English, it's very important to help students understand, I think from the intermediate level onwards or upwards. I think for you as just speakers, if you're in business or just want to learn the language, if you understand how the language works, you're able to manipulate it better. You're able to use it to your own advantage. So you don't have to be a scholar in parsing or, deconstruction. We call this grammatical deconstruction. I happen to really enjoy this because I'm a writer and my hobbies include things that are very boring. But I really enjoy these sorts of things because for me, it's sort of a challenge. It's an intellectual challenge or game. And I really enjoy this. And when you know really well how one language works, you can always compare that with a different language. And it helps you sort of mentally compartmentalize the second language. And honestly, you can remember it a lot quicker. And I'll give you an example, which many of you already know. If you speak one language like Russian or Spanish or, although maybe Persian or Assyrian, my friend speaks Assyrian, so Persian is very similar, so they have an ability to make that adaptation. But if you know your language, Spanish very well or Russian very well, then understanding maybe Ukrainian, or if you're Spanish and you look at Italian or French, obviously it's different, the language is different. But the grammatical constructions are not that far removed, although having said that, the Italian has a few grammatical issues that the Spanish doesn't. But the point is, you can compare what you know very well with the new language, and these differences, you help solidify them better. All right, so what are we going to do with this sentence? I'm going to show you how we can express this opinion, this idea differently, in different ways and in different registers. And the reason we want to have this ability is because we live in a very changing world with different contexts. Sometimes I have a suit on and I'm in a business meeting or an academic conference. Other times I'm in front of you speaking, which isn't as serious, but still serious. Other times I'm talking with friends, or I meet someone that I've never met. So we have different contexts, and our ability to adjust our language to the context is very important. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So remember this sentence, because this is the sentence we're going to use. If you want to take a photo of it, because we're going to then go to some comparisons. Shortly afterwards, the authorities decided to seek opinions from public art commissioners, critics, and members of the public. Now, the importance of language in formal and informal situations. We're going to start with formal. So this is more formal than the example because the example was a spoken example. And speaking, I'll just tell you, spoken English is by its very nature less formal than written language. And there's several reasons for that, but one of them is anything that requires us to write something down generally meant, historically anyway, that it was more important. Now that we're just texting people, that's not the case always, but formally, subsequent to this, is formal. What did we say up here shortly afterwards? I'm going to talk about these in a minute, but let's just read these together and you'll feel, I want you to start to feel the different levels of formality. Subsequent to this, the governing authorities opted to solicit feedback from the public art commissioners, critics, and the general population. I put locals, but that's informal. So I would actually like to take that out. And I'm going to do it now with my very interesting Adobe editor. So we're going to get rid of that. All right. Locals is going to be neutral, actually conversational or even informal. After that, the authorities, now we're reading neutral. After that, the authorities asked for feedback from public art commissioners, critics, and the general population. This is very neutral. Informal, the folks in charge, folks. We actually don't say folks. The folks in charge, people in charge, the authorities, excuse me, wanted to hear from public art peeps. Peeps is very informal. Peeps are people. Critics and just about anyone interested. Just about anyone interested is obviously informal. Now, the importance of neutral situations. I have two neutrals and another example of a formal. So you start to get the feel for the levels of formality. And let me say something. If this first encounter with such a lesson causes you to be in over your head, if you're in over your head or you're swimming in it, it's too difficult. Don't worry. Anytime we introduce a new concept, it's going to be a little bit confusing. Relax, try to pick up little pieces, and the next time you'll pick up more. So don't worry if you don't catch everything, if you don't catch all of the nuances with levels of formality. I'm assuming you won't catch them all. Excuse me. Soon after, here's neutral, a poll was taken to collect feedback from public art commissioners, critics, and the general population. That's a very neutral sentence. There's nothing that stands out. Now, let me say neutral doesn't mean boring or bad. Neutral means very clear language, but there's no, and it's accurate. There's nothing too formal that causes us to maybe have a reaction, nothing too informal. I like this language, so please don't understand neutral as boring. The officials reached out to the public art the public art commissioners, critics, and general population for opinions. Again, very natural, very clear, no special language. I mean, it's clear enough with special language, but you don't have anything like this. Here's the formal. Following the aforementioned event, this will stand out to me as very formal and even a little bit, what's the word I want to use? The aforementioned event. It's a little bit too formal unless you have unless you're doing an academic article and you want to be very precise. This is generally not going to be, you're not going to say this. Well, you could, but it's a little bit stilted. I don't even know if stilted's the word, but it's highbrow. The governing authorities asked for feedback from the same groups. All right. I like this same groups because you've summarized it. We need to know what the same groups are, obviously. Now, here's conversational English. Now, here's what I'd like you to do. This is your assignment right now, is look at these and tell me, do you notice any differences? Anything that stands out in the conversational ones, either as a conversational, register or between them as a comparison? So go for it. Take a look. Pause the video. I'm not going to wait. Pause the video and then you can restart it. So let's read them and I'll talk about the differences. They wanted to see what the public art commissioners, critics, and regular folks thought after the event. After that event, art commissioners, critics, and us common folks were asked for opinions. They were looking to get feedback from art commissioners, critics, and John Q. Public, which I'll talk about later. All right. So where is the conversation? They wanted to see what we thought. That's very conversational. They wanted to see what we thought. That's what I would say if I'm talking to a friend. Asked, so they asked for opinions. We're actually, sorry, this is actually, I was just thinking for a minute. This is passive. We don't have the authorities in here, which is fine. I guess it's conversational in that it's not great language here. We don't, it's fine. The passive is fine here, although we're going to see it later where passive is used in a formal sense. And finally, they were looking to get feedback from art critics. This is fine. They were looking to get feedback. They wanted to see what they thought. So these, when you're talking, if you're speaking or teaching conversational English, or you want to learn or to speak more just conversationally, this is your page. And these are the phrases you want to hone in on. Hone in on is mean focus on. Hone, H-O-N-E, hone in on. They wanted to see what we thought. They were looking to get our feedback. Very conversational, very clear, and very natural. All right, let's go on. Whoa. To the next page. Now we have informal. Here's some informal language, and this is fun for students, especially I think young kids love to see these comparisons and get to the informal, because this unfortunately is how a lot of their friends talk, or the videos that they're watching or listening to, music videos. This is probably how some of that people are gonna talk. The big shots. Big shots are important people, informally. Wanted to get input, fine, that's also conversational, from just about anyone interested in public art. Good. You know, this is a nice actual summary of the whole thing. So if you'll notice, obviously there's overlap between informal and conversational, so that's to be expected. Language is very fluid and it's moving. There aren't defined categories. Right after the event, they wanted to get feedback from everyone else and just about anyone interested. Okay, they were seeking feedback. Seeking is interesting. I'm not sure how informal that is, but art peeps alike. Now look at this, critics and public art peeps alike. Peeps are people, obviously very informal, even slang. Alike means both this and this group, or this, and this. So alike functions in that way, that both and. So this is, maybe I'll have you look at this a little bit later, and we'll just do one more. I'll let you look at this page on your own. It gives you the 4 different levels of communication in, so sort of the same idea, and it gives you 4 different examples. Oh, I will say this, an understanding, oh, excuse me, what happened? Okay, interesting. An understanding of cultural differences is important. This is in the passive. An understanding of cultural differences is important when, or it's nondescript. If it functions like a passive here. And oftentimes that indicates formality. The authorities asked for opinions, but the feedback they received was mixed. This is neutral, excuse me. The feedback they received was mixed. We got mixed feedback. That's conversational. And informal, the responses, or you could say in plural, the responses was, actually the responses might be better, all over the place. All over the place. Let me just change that. I've changed my mind here. Let's do this. Can we do it? Oh, we can't. I realize I copied it in a different font. So the response was all over. This is a great example of the different registers. So this is a great teaching tool. And again, you get to start to understand, or you start to understand the different levels of language. One more time, just to highlight some of the differences between formal, neutral, and conversational. The authorities opted to consult. Here, the officials talked it over. They got input from a bunch. Bunch is informal. From many, from numerous, that's more neutral. Now, here's what I'm talking about with the passive. This is a classic passive construction, and it illustrates a formal level. A formal announcement will be made in the coming days. We don't know who will make it because it's not that important. This is a very formal public service announcement. We'll notice we have the subject back in the neutral. It's less formal. We'll announce it soon. We'll let you know. And again, these contractions indicate lower levels of formality as well. A detailed report was issued in the passive. A report was issued. They put out a report. And they laid out. And this is what's interesting about phrasal verbs. We all clamor. It's a big word. Let's write that one down. Everyone learning English clamors. This is a great word. Clamors for those phrasal verbs. They're screaming for them. They want them. But in fact, if they're looking to have a very serious job, if your students want to work in a very serious job, they're going to need to know the equivalents of these phrasal verbs as well. Obviously, phrasal verbs, there's nothing wrong with them, and we use them all the time. But if you look here, they put out and they laid out. Here, they issued. And when we talk in academic or sort of terms, the way I teach and the way I understand it, issued is a more stable term than put out. And let me tell you why. Because phrasal verbs are more temporary. Their meanings can fluctuate more because they were sort of, just by their very nature, they're less stable in terms of meaning. Issued has nowhere to go. It's one word. Put out has two moving parts. Out can start to change, which would change put out. Put can start to change. So you have more moving parts, more chances of things moving or shifting in terms of meaning. Issued is going to be a better term. I would prefer issued. When I'm writing in my anything serious, I would opt for issued. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, but those are mine. All right, now let's make this a little bit clearer. I'm going to go to the next page. We've got a long lesson today, folks, but hopefully very interesting. I've put it in very brief terms just to show you the different terms that were used in the adverbial phrase, subject, verb. So just very quickly, I want you to know that the outside of the formal, everything else is pretty similar. It's hard to be very creative on these short adverbial phrases. Subsequent to this, following the aforementioned event, these are very stuffy. I can say stuffy, a little bit tight and rigid. It's a rigid tone, especially aforementioned. But neutral, conversational, and informal have they're very similar. And I think that's interesting. By contrast, when you go to the subjects, you can have a big difference from the formal to the informal. Take a look. The authorities, the officials, the governing authorities, the folk, look at the informal, the folks in charge, the big shots. Big difference between big shots and governing authorities. The powers that be, this is a very interesting one. The powers that be, though that is an actual subject phrase, which means authorities. The powers that be, that is a set phrase. If you've not heard of it, don't worry, but that is a set phrase. The powers that be will decide soon. Those generally mean political officials, government authorities. Here we have neutral authorities, officials, because that's just the language. So here, formal and neutral are very similar. Next, the verbs. As I mentioned, polled, solicited, opted to solicit. You could just say solicited as well, and I probably prefer solicited. So let me just, as I read these again, you get a second opinion on it. Oh, can I do that? Here we go. Solicited. Let me make this a little bit bigger so we have it there. Okay. All right. Solicited, polled. Formal verbs, again, these sort of main verbs that have one word are going to be a little bit better than those that wanted to see, wanted to hear, wanted to get, etc. Asked for is a phrasal verb, perfectly fine. But notice solicited and polled, I would always prefer. So for example, if you're learning, now this is very interesting in terms of IELTS or any international exam. Obviously, we're not teaching that, but I will be teaching these courses. And as an examiner, as someone who, judges many types of things, events, performances, papers, solicited and polled are much more impressive than asked for, because it's just more accurate, I think. Solicited is a lot better word than asked for. I will tell you, it brings up, it has more connotations. You can sort of think about that. There's a sort of a picture that's drawn. Asked for, I think less so. Reached out is a phrasal verb. Now, please don't misunderstand me. These phrasal verbs in the neutral category are fine. But at the advanced level, we should start learning the formal, which I don't even think they're formal. They're just really good words if they're accurately used. Solicited, polled. All right, let's move on. Objects of prepositions. Okay, we've already done that, so I will move past that very quickly. John Q. Public, I mentioned once. This is from Wikipedia. It's a generic name, a placeholder name, like in Polish, you have Jan Kowalski. This is like a word you use for every Polish person. Jan Kowalski. Do you have such a thing in your language? John Q. Public is a generic name, especially in American English, to denote a hypothetical member of society, the common person, who is presumed to represent the man on the street. Now, according to Wikipedia, I've actually never heard this spoken, but I can believe it's true. Joe Public. So it's very similar. John Q and Joe are relatives. All right. Now, we're going to move on. That's an extended discussion of one listening sentence. Let me know how interesting you found that. If you didn't find it interesting, please tell me. There's no penalty. You still will get your certificate. All right, let's continue. I'm actually going to, you know about the grammar and the pronunciation. Pronunciation is done for you with the audio files, I believe, right here. I want to move to the grammar just for a minute, grammar section. And we're going to end with this, and it's going to be quite interesting because we're dealing with perception and sensation. You're going to have these exercises on the right. I'm not going to read the ones on the left. I think it's pretty clear, the instructions. But the reason I'm going to talk about what I'm going to talk about in a minute is because I'm smelling is considered a mistake. And I want to talk about stative verbs. These are called stative verbs. You can see here, stative or non-action verbs normally aren't used in the continuous. That's in a sort of standard traditional English, formal English, going by the rules. But as we know, some people don't like to play by the rules. And so we're going to talk about that because that group of people is growing and growing and growing. And so is the informal situations that sort of invite these phrases, which I'll talk about in a minute. Before I do that, I just want to mention a few things that I think are interesting. It tastes or smells of. It smells of is more common, and it tastes like. So we have these two phrases here. It smells of and tastes like. So this is really interesting. So if you say it tastes of or smells of, it means it reminds you of that, but it's not that. If you say it tastes like or smells like, it could be that actual thing. So it's slightly different, and I think very interesting to note the nuance or subtlety in difference, the subtlety in difference. By the way, subtlety might be the most difficult word in English to spell, and I'm sure I'm going to misspell it again. Subtle. T. Subtlety. Listen to that. This is how that word's spelled. I think I spelled it right, but you can check. Subtlety, subtlety. Crazy, isn't it? The subtlety is the small details, The subtlety of the language. All right. Now, I want to talk about my final moment here is the informal use of stative verbs. And again, I should put the S at the end. Oh, let's make that a bit bigger. There we go. Sorry for the online editing, but I want to get this right. All right, so some stative verbs can be used. What I've done is picked out the most common examples with the regular rule followed by the informal usage that is very common in my world. So, for example, I think he's a great actor. I'm thinking of going to the beach. I'm currently considering it. So this is used in the ing, even though technically stative verbs aren't to be found in the continuous tense. Here they are informally. I don't want to read all of these to you because obviously you can read, but I would go through this very carefully. Believe, I believe in goes, I'm believing more and more. We have this increasing belief, very interesting. Love, there's an expression here, I'm loving this album, the very common informal expression, which I just found it and I love it. Here's a strap line from, I think, isn't it McDonald's? I'm loving it. Here, again, a stative verb, non-action verb, is now being used as a strap line. A strap line is the motto for the company. Just do it for Nike. I'm loving it, I think, is McDonald's. All right. We call that a strap line or sort of the catchphrase of the company. I'm seeing someone is not literal. It means you're dating someone. This soup tastes good. The wine is tasting a bit sour. Honestly, I don't use tasting much, but informally people would. Have, we all know because we use these. She's having a shower. They're having a party. It's an ongoing activity, even though, because have has, several different meanings. Having a shower means taking. So that's more action. That's how that's described or justified in the grammar books. Having a party, throwing a party, that's an action. Organizing, so that's how you justify have in that sense, because have is a catch-all phrase, catch-all term for a lot of different actions. Throwing a party, organizing a party, taking a shower, lots of different things we use with have. And honestly, it's a lazy term, but it's one that's used informally. It's much better if you're speaking to a group to use the original words rather than these lazy terms. So we're organizing a meeting, which will be happening next week. So we're in the process of organizing that now. All right. She has a cat. She looks great. She's looking tired these days. It's a temporary appearance. I think this page here is very helpful, especially if you're teaching, or especially if you like to speak with friends in English informally. So if you're speaking with friends, it's automatically informal. So this is, I think, a very helpful PDF. All right, we've covered a lot of material. I hope you get something from it. Let me know. You've got a lot of homework. Enjoy, and speak to you very soon. Bye-bye.